Hello, and welcome to Collective Rising Conversations. Today we have our guest, Amanda Cottrell. Welcome to the show, Amanda.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you for taking time to speak with us today. I'm excited to get into it. But before we do that, I just want to start with just setting an intention for the session. So I'll just go quickly and then give you an opportunity to do the same. So my intention for this session is to have a conversation about whatever it is that is helping you to raise the collective consciousness and what has been helpful for you along your journey to grow and evolve, and for this to be an engaging listen for people. And my intention is for people to be able to get something out of this conversation that they can use in their own lives.
Awesome. Well, I am a teacher, and whenever I get a chance to speak or to share my stories, my intention is always to help empower others to find their own unique gifts within themselves and then to spread that to the world. So that's my intention for tonight is I hope that I can spark some creativity or some empowerment into somebody else so that they can gain their own self-confidence to go out into the world and share their gifts.
Amazing. I love that. And so you touched on it. So you are a teacher. And so I just love for you to kind of describe your journey that has gotten you to not only your profession, but to be sitting in front of this computer recording this session here tonight.
Wow. Okay, that's a long story. No. Well, I've always no matter what I've done, I always worked with children, and whether it was my very first job was essentially lifeguarding and teaching swimming lessons, and then I worked at summer camps, and there was just always teaching. I couldn't imagine doing anything else other than teaching, but I also wanted to go to law school. So there was I have a political science degree was my first degree. And then I went into education with the intention of being a high school social studies teacher. But then at the time, it was actually harder to get into high school social studies than it was for me to go to law school, essentially. And so I ended up applying for elementary school and I got in, and then I just loved the elementary kids so much. And so I essentially I'm so grateful that I ended up where I am in elementary school, because in elementary school I'm able to tie so many parts of the curriculum together, and I'm not as run by bells as say a high school or a middle school is, because I have a big chunk of the day and then it's recess, and then I have another big chunk of the day and then it's lunch, and then I have another big chunk of the day and then it's home time. And essentially I can weave art, language, and social studies and language arts and science all together, and I can tie in math, and I can even tie math into art projects. And so because I think a big picture, and when I think about learning, I always think about how can I tie this to real life? And what I struggle with in the education system is how once we get out of that elementary school where it's more flow, then it's every subject's in its own little box and you can't intertwine them, and then it's hard to see how you can make meaning of the things that you're learning and connect them to things that you see in the real world, because the real world isn't compartmentalized into boxes of subjects that we're learning.
Right.
So, and then I got here because I know you from a very long time ago, and we reconnected during the pandemic because I was so empowered by something that you had shared on social media, standing up and speaking your truth, and that's how we reconnected. And so I've known you since I probably was in grade 10, or no, probably younger than that, grade 7 or something, because I was friends with your younger brother. So long time. I'm in my 40s now, so a very long time.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, you're the same age as my younger brother. So knew you through, I guess, him and through high school. And then, your high school is over, everyone goes their own ways. And then just for people that don't kind of know about that video that I made during the pandemic. So I was still employed by the Calgary Police Service, and I made a video during the Freedom Convoy. And this was closer to the time when the police started seizing fuel from the truckers. And for me, it was just like a line in the sand that had been crossed. Just seeing that, it was just such clear political influence pushing the police to do things that is just outside of the charter and outside of just what we should be doing. And so I recorded a video just really appealing to my fellow police officers just to really think about what they were doing. And that video took on a life of its own and ended up reconnecting me with you in a roundabout, interesting way. And yeah, I'm grateful for that connection and for so many things that have happened throughout the past 5 years. It's really brought together the people that you want to be brought together, really. And it's certainly not been easy. And there's been a lot of hard and a lot of tragedies and a lot of really awful things that have happened to individuals and families and uh, our entire world. But at the same time, it was 100% necessary to bring all of that corruption and deceit and all of the garbage that's been going on for way too long, bringing it to the surface. Because if without it coming to the surface, it will never change. And we are alive for the greatest transition in not just on this planet either. I firmly believe that it's like galactic at this point. Like there's never been a society or a group of beings that have gone this far into the darkness and are coming out of it. And that is what's happening. The collective consciousness is rising. And I believe that that's why there's so much seemingly chaotic things happening in the world, is because the things that have been hidden and under the surface for so long are not in vibrational resonance with where we're headed and where we are as a collective. And so it's all being shaken up and brought to the surface. And that's how things change. And so it's a really, really interesting time to be a human. And it's going to be a rocky ride. And we have a front row seat for it. And I'm truly excited for the future. I have a lot of optimism for us as humans to really use this time and the amazing technology that we have in order to put in place systems that are actually beneficial for people. And so that all being said, I'd love to hear your perspective on education and where you think we are and where we could make some improvements and just your overall sense of it.
Yeah, well, I think with any like big organization, there's always like big flaws, and then there's like good things about it too. And the other day, like I just got a chance to take my students skiing, and without that gym teacher like organizing the ski trip, so many of my students had never been skiing before. And so like just like seeing their faces and seeing them light up and seeing them get to go skiing for the first time ever in their whole lives in grade 5 is like just like so uplifting and so heartwarming. And I was just like, this is the purpose of school, right? Is
Mm.
to give kids opportunities to try things that they never would get a chance to do in their families. Like, this is the purpose of school. And then there's like the downfalls of school where it's like rote memorization and like things that are not really functioning well. But then there's like, you can see like we're struggling to find balance, right? We're struggling to find balance between like there's a lot of good things going on and there's a lot of bad things going on. And like, how do we balance that and how do we bring out more of the good and get rid of the bad, right? And so when I look at education, I think like how I always try to focus on like the positives, and the positives are like, what can we teach and inspire kids within my own classroom, and how can I influence them that way, and how can I get them to like really think about what their gifts are and then do more of that. And so like one of the books that I wrote, because I've written a number of children's books, is called like What Do You Learn at School? And essentially the like meaning of it is that like I use this book at the beginning of my school year generally, and I read it to the kids and I say like, what do you think you're going to remember in 20 years about what I taught you in grade 5? And they're like, I don't know. I'm like, what do you remember from last year? They remember like 2 things. And like when I ask an adult, like, what do you remember about grade 5 or whatever grade it is that I'm teaching at that time? They're like, they remember like 2 things. So the specifics of what I'm teaching in the classroom mean nothing. They literally mean nothing. What matters is, did I like inspire them? Did I make them believe in themselves? Did I make them try something new that they maybe wouldn't have tried before? Did we learn something that maybe helped them think differently about something else, right? Those are the things. Do they have like one project that they really remember? Because those are the things that I remember about grade five. I remember we were reading The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I remember there was a snake that came in and pooped on the carpet. And I remember we did like crossword puzzles like every Friday. That's all I remember about grade five. And when I tell the kids that, they just laugh. And I'm like, but when we think about it, even like the people that were in my class at that time, I actually think your brother was in my class at that time in grade five. I'll have to look and double check. But they remember how other people in your class made you feel. I don't remember anything else, right? I remember how people in my class made me feel and the specific people, right? And then you remember how your teacher made you feel. But other than that, there's not a lot of like specifics about the curriculum that I remember. And if you look back to your grade five, like, do you remember any specifics about what you were taught? Probably not.
Definitely not.
And so we focus so much on the curriculum as like the education system as a whole, but we have to like almost take a step back and be like, okay, what is it that we're really trying to get across here? That's deeper than checking the boxes off of what the curriculum says we have to teach because they don't remember the specifics. They remember the like big projects or the big art project or whatever. I even remember I was teaching grade five, six. This was like one of my beginning teaching years. And I had taught a grade two, three split years before in the same school. And I was teaching the same kids in grade five, six. And we were starting multiplication, and they were like, we've never done multiplication before, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yes, you have. You started multiplication in grade three. And they're like, no, we haven't. We never learned multiplication. And I was like, literally, I was your teacher in grade three, and we made the multiplication houses as an art project. And they're like, oh yeah, we did. I still have mine at home. All right. And so like this art project that they did, they remembered that, oh, maybe we did actually learn multiplication in grade three. But it's those like bigger things. Like they wouldn't remember the worksheet that we did on multiplication, but they remember.
Yeah.
And it's like almost like you have to trigger those like, what was the bigger project that we did that might spark your memory to be like, oh, I did learn a little bit about this a few years before. And so when I look at teaching, I always try to pick like big picture, like how can I tie in math? How can I tie in language arts? How can I tie in an art project so that there's at least pieces that they'll remember?
Yeah, this is so amazing. So I bought your book, and so I have three little boys and read it to them. And the part that really stuck out for me, and like this is me as like a 45-year-old man, like really getting something out of this book. And it was what you remember is how people made you feel. And it's something that I literally thought about this actually the other day. And I think it was a work situation, and it was like, yeah, how am I making another person that I work with, how am I making them feel? And it was like a really good reminder for me as an adult of like how much impact you can have on someone just by making them feel. And in this case, you want them to feel a positive thing. And yeah, it's just a great lesson for kids, of course, and also for us as adults. I'd love to hear from you so your philosophy and kind of the way you look at teaching with tying the things together and tying art in with math and seeing kind of that bigger picture. How common is that among your coworkers, or is this something kind of unique to you?
I think there's definitely pockets of teachers doing stuff like this, but a lot of teachers are like overwhelmed. They don't think outside the box and they don't see how things can tie together. And that's like my specialty, right? Like my specialty is being like, oh, I want to use that robot for something. How am I going to tie it into the curriculum? And then I like find some way to tie it into the curriculum. And I just made a TikTok video, which is probably one of the reasons why you reconnected with me, is because I hadn't done TikTok videos in a long time. And essentially I was talking about this project where I was like, I want to use the Spiros. They're these like little robot balls that like we can program using code. And I was like, I don't know how I can tie this into the curriculum. And then I was like, okay, we're going to tie it into math. We're going to tie it into measurement. We're going to tie it into area and perimeter. We're going to make golf course holes, and we're going to tie it into ICT by like programming. And then we actually ended up writing to the golf course, the local golf course by our school, and had the manager come in and talk to the class. And so essentially me just wanting to like play with the robots turned into this like much bigger project where we got to tie it all in, right? And so, but I sometimes just have to sit with my ideas and be like, well, I want to play with this, and how can I make it work, essentially.
So, yeah, I just love how you were able to tie that project into real life and really, I think, bring it home for those kids and just not be following some strict, curriculum thing that would just have kids sitting in their desks and just listening to you all day. And again, just bringing that to life. So I think that's amazing. So is that something that you like, do you have leeway to find those ways to bring that into your classroom? And is that something that you'd like to be able to do more of, or do you have any flexibility there?
Well, we definitely have some flexibility, but there there's like so much all the time, right? And they're starting to make it so that there's not as much leeway, like especially with like government testing and those sort of things. And so like I don't teach a grade that has government testing on purpose because not that because I don't mind it in like math and language arts, but when it's like science and social studies, I feel like it like ruins my creative gifts because I'm like I have to teach basically like specific lines in a textbook, and I have zero interest in teaching specific lines in a textbook that nobody's going to remember in 20 years, clearly. And so then I always try to pick like how can we tie this into real life and make it meaningful? Can I teach them how to, if I'm not just teaching letter writing, we're going to actually write a letter and then send it. And we did. We wrote persuasive letters to the golf course to be like, hey, we have all these ideas for your golf course. You should come and see what we created. And then they did. The manager came in and talked to us. And so that made it meaningful, right? It made it real life.
Yeah.
So I think we need more of those real life experiences in the classroom and just opportunities for kids to show their learning in multiple different ways as well. Because within that project, the kids that were good at writing could showcase their writing. The kids that are good at programming and tech could show their expertise in tech. The kids that are good at art could show their creativity in the like 3D settings that we made of golf course holes for the Sphero to like go across. And the kids that were good at math could show it by explaining how to find area and perimeter and the distance correctly. So we're tying it into all different pieces, right? And I think we need bigger projects that allow kids to showcase their expertise in multiple ways.
Right. Yeah. And then it sounds like working together as a team as well, which I don't think is, from my perspective anyway, something that's too common. I don't think in school it's a lot of just individual, it seems like, and then just memorize this stuff and then be able to regurgitate it, I guess, in a way on a test. And
Yeah.
so I just think that's setting them up for more what real life looks like, because as humans we all have different strengths and weaknesses, and in a team setting we can utilize those different strengths and
Yeah.
talents.
Yeah, a number of years ago, there was a document put out by the, I think, Alberta government or someone, I think it was by Sharon Friesen, and it was essentially like, what do we want kids to do in school? And it talked about entrepreneurial spirit, critical thinking skills, and collaboration, and those were like the pillars that they wanted to focus on. And then government shifted and that went out the window. And so And that's the part that I'm like, no, we were on the right track with those pillars anyways. Like I really think those pillars are key because we want kids to think outside the box and be entrepreneurial. We need people who have collaboration skills and we need people who have critical thinking skills. And critical thinking skills is one of the like most essential skills that I think every person needs to have. And we're seeing less and less of that all the time. And I found a quote today because I knew he was coming on here. And I just want to read it to you. It's by George Carlin, and it says, "Don't teach children to read. Teach them to question what they read. Teach them to question everything. The value of an education is not the learning of many facts, but the training of the mind to think." And I was like, oh, that is so perfect. That is what we need to be doing in school, is teaching kids to be critical thinkers. It's not memorizing facts. It's to think critically about what it is that we're teaching and not to just blindly follow instructions by people in authority. We need to think critically about what it is that we're doing and why, and then how does that value society?
Yeah. It's hilarious that a quote by a comedian like completely encapsulates and like talks about exactly what we should be doing in our education system. I love George Carlin. He's amazing. And it's just, yeah. Do you think that that's at odds with kind of the push from the powers that be? And what I mean is, do you think that there is an emphasis on, you know, that collaboration and that entrepreneurship, or is it something else that's coming down from the top, and why the shift? Why were we headed in the right direction and then all of a sudden we made another turn, it seems like?
It changes with every like government that we have in, and they shift what it is that they want. I know that there's different places in the world that are definitely focusing on those critical thinking skills and collaboration. There's a lady that I follow on Instagram who's created these like schools that I think are like fascinating. I can't remember exactly what it is that her school is called, but she's all throughout the states, and they do this like focused learning in the mornings, and then they do these like bigger projects in the afternoons where they're like actually doing entrepreneurial things, and they use AI to help them learn. And I think I'm pretty fascinated by it, but also like cautious of it at the same time. And I think there needs to be more research into that. But I know also like the Finnish system has like a fantastic system, and has been one of the top education systems in the world for numerous years. Like when I did my master's degree, we did a lot of research and case studies on the Finnish system. And then here in where I live, we're not actually focusing on that. And I always question like, why aren't we using these models that are working to help us? And so that's something that I would like question, is like, okay, which school systems are doing really well and why are they doing very, very well? And not necessarily even in a test taking capacity, but in like, are we creating balanced citizens who are not on stuck on antidepressants, who are like feeling whole and secure and confident, and who have the confidence to go out and try new things and to be entrepreneurial and to think critically, and so not necessarily like something that you can always test on a test score, but something of like you could study holistically, like looking at people more holistically is I think what we need to do more so. And I do see a lot of value in the school system. Like there's children who would never get certain experiences without it. And sometimes the school is the safest place for them. And so that's why it's, for me, it's always this like, okay, well, there's like lots of not so great things, but then there's like lots of really great things. And I follow people on social media too who are like homeschoolers, and they're like, burn the system, like essentially, right? And I'm like, well, that's great for you because you have this functioning family who's like together and all of and can take your kids on all of these field trips and has the time to spend, and one of you is working full time and making really good money, and the other one can like be this wonderful homeschool parent. But then you forget that we have children in society who have coke addicts as parents, who are in foster care, who don't even know what a home cooked meal is, and you're telling us that we need to burn the system, and like what happens to those kids then? So I'm like, I see your point of like the homeschool system is really great for your family, but it doesn't work for these kids that like school is the safest place for them. And if unless you're in the schools, you don't actually see that. And like even my own world of like I teach in a very upper middle class school, and 90% of my children had never been to the ski hill before. And we live like an hour from the mountains. So that is like mind blowing to me that we live this close, and the first time 90% of my students had ever been skiing was in my classroom because of my gym teacher organizing it. And that's, I think, the part where we like, okay, well, we bash the system, but then we forget about those like really good things that are actually working and are helping, and we don't know how to like bring together, like fix the broken pieces and bring up the good pieces, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's there's no easy answers, of course. It's, it's there's so many people like from all different walks of life like you've just described that are all being, captured in this one system that we have, and it's yeah, it's never going to be the perfect system for any individual, but yeah, we just got to make the best with what we have and move forward in a positive way. And so I'll just highlight something that's been kind of happening at the school that my kids go to, and just a perspective that I have, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. So there's definitely some kids with some big behavior issues, and to the point where my middle son, who's in grade 4 this year, his classroom is on the main floor of the school because they can't have this kid on the upper floor because of issues where he's threatened to throw kids off of balconies and just like really scary stuff like that. And it's just I'm yeah, I don't know if a lot of parents or even teachers, to be totally honest, in this school in particular, have a lot of compassion for this little guy who's obviously has some major stuff going on at home. And it just goes back to the whole like hurt people, and this is like the beginning of that. And unfortunately it's happening in grade 4, so with 9-year olds, which is super scary and sad. But it's, yeah, you don't know what these kids are dealing with at home, the terrible things and situations that they're in, and then they come to school and they're having behavior issues, and it's like, well, yeah, of course they are traumatized little humans. And but what do we do with kids like that, and how do we give that kid the best possible education and the best chance at life, without putting other kids potentially at risk? Like, it's such a hard thing. I can't even imagine what that would be like for a teacher and for the administration, dealing with issues like that. Just curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, that's one of the toughest parts of teaching and of education is when you get into situations like that. And I've been that teacher where I've had children like that in my room, and it's really hard. And I think one of the things that we need to recognize is like what you said is hurt people, and a lot of the times the teachers know the background of that child's life, so we can like have some empathy of like why they're behaving the way that they're behaving. But I also think too there's a lot more supports needed that we are not getting supported on. So like having counselors in the school, having um, EAs to work with those kids that have training to actually be able to help them. Those are the things that's falling through the cracks that I would love to see more support in, because and that's where those parts of the system I think we really need to do some more research on, essentially, and all, not even just do some more research on, is like, how do we fix these pieces? Because you're right, your son should be going to school, and it should be a safe, caring place where they are able to learn, and where they feel safe to learn and feel safe to try new things. And it sounds like the space that your son is in is not one of those spaces. And that's where I think we need to take a step back and be like, okay, how do we fix these pieces, right? Because and I don't have an answer for you on how to fix it, but you've definitely brought up one of those spaces where that's part of the system that's broken, for sure.
Yeah. And just sort of along those lines, and this is me just not having any intimate knowledge of the system or what it looks like. But so my understanding is that our current education system, kind of as a whole, was brought in like around the Industrial Revolution. Is this right? So like kind of creating good little excuse me, factory workers, and like cramming, you know, square pegs and triangle pegs and octagon pegs into the same shape hole. And is that something that is accurate at all? And
Yeah.
what does that look like in the real world?
Yeah, 100%. Like, our education system is based on a 300-year-old system that was essentially created to create factory workers. And while we know that that's why it was created and how it was created, we haven't evolved to be able to, now that we don't need carbon copies of people, we need something different, but the system's so slow in evolving, right? Because we need something totally different. We don't need carbon copies. At that time, we did. We need people who could read, who could write, who could do math, and who could essentially like act as a computer, right? So that we could like go across the world and have conversations with people. Whereas now we can do that. That's not like, it's still an essential skill, but we don't need carbon copies of people going across the globe to be able to trade with each other. We have those skills in a computer and in different things. And so when we're looking at education, I really think we need to be like sparking the creativity within people. Because when you think about like, what is it that you're doing that makes you like so passionate and feel alive, right? And I think we need to do more of that. Do we need to learn how to read and write and do math? Absolutely. But that shouldn't be our primary focus. Our focus should be, how do we use those tools to like drive our passion, right? Drive something that we can't stop thinking about, or that we love to do. I think we need to see more of that, and that's the part where I'm like, okay, how can I? And each kid's different, right? So like, some kids like love the Spiros, and some kids hate them, and some kids love art, and other kids hate it. And so finding more opportunities to like allow children multiple ways to show their learning in meaningful ways is what I would love to see our education systems shift towards.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think that the world is a better place and is going to be able to be the highest expression that's possible when everyone is uniquely and 100% themselves, and whatever their unique talent is and whatever brings them passion and joy, if they're doing that and bringing that to the world, then we live in a really good place. And we're all so unique and have such unique interests and talents and all the things, and it's so rare to find to see someone as an adult that's actually doing what brings them joy. And I don't know how, like, cuz life happens, right? You got to pay the bills and do all the things, and it is just to the detriment of our happiness, I think, when we're stuck in that square box when we're clearly not square. Yeah, I just curious what you think of that, and how can we foster that for the next generation through education?
Yeah, so one of the like speakers that I went and saw a number of years ago, actually like in my like second year ever of teaching, which was like in like 2007, was Sir Ken Robinson, and he is actually the number one TED Talk ever on all of TED Talk's history, and he spoke on the question essentially, do schools kill creativity? And when I saw him speak, I was like absolutely like mesmerized by him, and 100% bought into to what he was saying, and like that we need to see more of this creativity and focus on like that kid that doesn't have ADD, they're a dancer, they need to dance more. That kid like can hyper focus on this, we need to give them more of that. And I was like so inspired by him, and yet that was almost 20 years ago now, and I've seen very little change since then. And that's the part that I'm like, as a beginning teacher, I'm like, yes, this is what we need more of. And then it's like, still like almost 20 years later, and we're like, oh, we're still not there yet. And that research is still just as important today as it was then. And I think more people need to be speaking about empowering children at very young ages. And I don't know if you've ever read the book Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty, but in it he talks about how essentially in the monasteries, the very first thing that they teach children to do is not the ABCs. They teach children to control their breath. And the reason that they teach children to control their breath is because your breath will be with you from the moment you're born to the moment you die. And so when we can control our breath, we're able to control our internal world. Because if you ever notice, when you're like really angry, your breath changes. When you're really anxious, your breath changes. When you are really tired, your breath changes. And so when we are able to regulate our breath, we're able to regulate our nervous system. And I just was like, why are we not doing more of this in schools? Why is this the first time I'm learning about it on a book that I'm choosing to read by myself as an educator, right? Like, why are we not doing more of that in schools if there's so much importance and mindfulness behind this? And I really think we need to bring more mindfulness into the school system as well.
Yeah. Yeah, you're speaking my language. Breath is our connection to our central nervous system, and when we can regulate our central nervous system real time, and the best way to do that is with our breath. I mean, we got life figured out. So if we can teach our kids those skills at an early age and normalize that, yeah, it's going to be amazing what's possible for those kids. And it's just, yeah, really interesting to hear you talk about that time period where you saw this speaker too early in your career and get all excited, and we're going to change the world and this is going to be the way of the future. And then, yeah, fast forward a couple of decades, and unfortunately, I think you mentioned it earlier, talking about just how slow change is to come into these big systems. And so, but yeah, I'd like to shift gears a little bit and just talk about some things that you have found personally that have really helped you to be the best person, day in, day out, like to show up for those kids even when you're maybe not feeling it. Like, what are your practices that really help you be the best version of yourself?
We kind of like talked about them already, like breath work, and then like go to yoga regularly and go to the gym and exercise and spend a lot of time in the mountains. Those are like my like mental health like go-tos, because essentially like in order to show up as the best version of myself in the classroom, I have to like refill my own cup. I found with like because I have an anxiety disorder, I've found with like yoga and breath work and getting lots of exercise. So those are the things that help me, but also like eating a really clean diet as well is like our gut health is so important to our brain health, which is so important to our overall health. And so like I really think when we're looking at people, we have to look at them like holistically, energetically, look at their like whole history. Like you were talking about that child from your son's school who's like clearly struggling on so many levels. And so there's definitely like we need to look at this child like holistically, like the history, what's he eating,
Yeah.
what sort of exercise is he getting, what's home life like, what's the family history like, is there a history of certain disorders, and then what sort of mindfulness practices or even like medical practices could support that child in being able to actually function in the classroom, right?
Yeah, you just brought up well so many amazing things, but just thinking about diet specifically and some of those things that are marketed for kids specifically that contain all these different food dyes and different things that are scientifically proven to cause hyperactivity and attention deficits and all sorts of other issues, and like that's the stuff that we're feeding our kids and then expecting them to go into a classroom setting and sit still and listen and retain. And yeah, it's just wild where we're at with that side of things. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Like with those types of things, like I'll talk to parents, I'll be like, your child's like very hyperactive in the classroom. Like, what sort have you tried cutting out red food dye? And they're like, what's red food dye?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Like there needs to be so much education of like the parents as well to know that like buying Lunchables is not a good option for your child to be able to like optimally focus in the classroom because of the chemicals that are in that processed food, right? And so like so much of it too is like our overstimulated like lives cause us to like rush and get something unhealthy, rush and like here I'll just throw some Lunchables in the lunch. Here, like here's some candy, whatever, right? Like those like quick go-tos. But then when we make really healthy things available, then our maybe we'll make that our more natural go-to. And like one year I taught on this like lesson on how to like eat healthy, and one of the very first things one of my students blurted out was like, I never eat anything healthy. And then eventually we like ended up doing this like bring in your like healthy meal, and we had this like where everybody got to go around and taste things that they like was like a healthy meal that they like to eat at home, and try different things. And then we made a recipe book about all of the like healthy favorites in our classroom. And it was such a fantastic opportunity for kids that are like really picky eaters to like actually choose something healthy for once. But also it was like a really good insight into like what are these kids actually eating at home. And even like the kid who like just ate garbage all the time, like actually knew that he was not eating healthy and making that a like conscious choice. But even when we are able to like peel it back a little bit, there were a couple of the healthy things that were brought in that he's like, ooh, I kind of would like that, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's just a lot of lack of awareness around that, and you definitely highlighted that with the the parents not even knowing about food dye and the issues with that. And yeah, it just goes back to that holistic piece for sure, and how what's fueling these kids, what are they exposed to at home, what are their screen time habits looking like, and how is that affecting them. And I just like to hear again what your opinion is on screens and different maybe games specifically, and if you see that play out in the classroom in a negative way.
Yeah, so I definitely do. And for me with screens, like I have a master's in education technology. And so like I think that we have so much power in technology that we need to be like utilizing in the classroom. But at the same time, it's not about like how much time you're spending on the devices, it's what is it that you're doing with that device. And so are we being conscious creators or are we being passive consumers? And I guarantee you that the 90% of the time that children, or even like 99% of the time that children are on devices at home, they're being passive consumers and not conscious creators. And what I think we need to focus on more is utilizing devices to be conscious creators or even conscious learners. So are you using your device to like learn something new? Are you watching a how to draw video and learning how to draw better? Are you um watching how to dance videos and like learning how to dance? Like there was a TED talk that I watched. I think it was with, I can't remember which one it was, but it was essentially this video that I watched like in my master's degree a number of years ago, where they were using cell phones to essentially like in Africa learn and then like turn garbage dumps into like essentially where they would clean it out and then make them like community gardens. And by learning all of the things from the cell phone, because as soon as they were connected to the world, they could essentially like learn. And they were using the devices as learning tools, not as something to like zone out and scroll or just like play video games all night long. And some of the kids that are the most behind in their learning are the ones that are spending like their whole evenings on video games when they get home from school. And so I'm always about balance, right? Like how much time are you spending doing certain things and then like what is it that you're doing with those things? Because I think that's the bigger question than time specifically.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that for sure cuz it's a necessary, well not necessary, sorry, but it's a part of our world, right? Like the devices and the technology, it's here. So we have to learn to live with it. And so I really like that conscious creator versus passive consumer. I'm going to highlight that with my boys and see what we can do here as well. But yeah, just, I mean, and not to, throw shade at parents or make people feel bad because being a parent is hard for sure. And unfortunately, throwing an iPad or a phone at a kid is a lot of times the easier thing to do. But yeah, it's all about balance and that what are you doing with it? Is it adding to your life or are you learning, helping, that sort of thing? Or are you just numbing out and scrolling kind of thing? So yeah, I really like that. So what would you say are what are something that someone could take from our conversation and implement with their own kids, for example, or in their own lives to really help them just be that best version that's possible?
Yeah, well, I would definitely like take a moment to just like really set in with your like body and your mind and your spirit and just like take some times to just like meditate on what it is that like you truly want in your life, or also even like focus on your breath, focus on your breath work, and begin to teach children to use their breath to help regulate, self-regulate. And I think that's something that we are not doing enough of. And even I've had kids like actually have like full-on panic attacks in the classroom over like math questions. And I'm like, oh, like this doesn't matter. This math
Right.
question doesn't matter. Just like let's breathe. Let's breathe. It doesn't matter that you don't get it. We'll keep working on it. We'll get it eventually. But like this isn't enough of a big deal to like have a full-blown panic attack over. And so like teaching kids to learn how to control their breath or to like ask for help before they get to that point of like I'm so frustrated, right? Over, and I've had numerous kids over the years get like very frustrated in math. And they're actually normally the kids that are like know what they're doing and are really good at it, but they're just like perfectionists and they want to like know it perfectly instantly. And when they don't, they get very frustrated and and then start panicking because they're not instantly good at something. And so it's good to teach kids that there's like growth in your struggle as well, right? Sometimes, like they talk about the lotus flower coming out of the mud, right? Like
Mm.
sometimes the most beautiful things and the most life-changing things come out of the like muck.
For
And I think
sure.
that's something that we need to remember.
For sure. Yeah, the butterfly as well, for sure.
Mhm. Yeah.
And do you have a specific breath technique that you use with kids that are having a situation like that?
It was usually I just start breathing with them. I'll be like, breathe in with me, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and breathe out with me, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or we'll do like breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out with our like fingers, and you trace your fingers over your fingers and just keep breathing in and breathing out, or doing a bumblebee breath where you take a deep breath in and then you buzz out like a bee. They love that one.
So is that in through the nose and then out through the nose as well, or?
You breathe in through the nose and then you buzz out through your like lips. Mhm.
Oh, okay. I won't make you demonstrate that. And is there a count associated with that, or is it just natural?
No, just natural breath. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. No, that's great.
But it's one of my
Sorry, say that last part again.
but it's one of the kids' favorites and it's one of mine.
Yeah, for sure. And I think if just knowing a little bit about breath work, if you can accentuate your exhale and have your exhale be longer than your inhale, it really tells you your body on a deep level that you are safe. And so I love the 4-2-6. So 4-second inhale, 2-second hold, 6-second exhale.
Yeah.
That will get rid of tension in your body like within 5 breaths like that. It's, yeah, it really is amazing how much influence we can have over our state with just our breath alone. And when things are not going well, having a hard day with the kids or whatever it is, just to take 10 deep in and out breaths through, I do it through my in and out through my mouth. So like that 10 times, it's like, it's wild. So I've just done 2 breaths and I can already feel like a state change happening. And yeah, it's really amazing how quickly we can shift and come out in a more positive way, for sure. So what else would you kind of close with to help people or give people kind of a, yeah, something that they can take forward and some positivity, or just, yeah, really anything that comes to mind?
Well, I think like a lot of people sometimes feel like really stuck in like their daily routine or whatever it is that like you said, like lives get busy and we get busy with kids and we forget about like those things that fill our cups. And so I really think that it's really essential for people to spend some time doing things that are like really valuable to them. And sometimes it might be like painting or drawing or reading or going for a run. And those things that like really fill your cup up are things that you need to do more of. And even for children too. And when we look back on our lives and we like think, if you're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, that's like my passion, I want you to think back to like what's something you really loved to do as a child and just do more of that. And then I think sometimes we're meant to be like childlike in lots of ways, like that playfulness. We need to ignite that playfulness inside of ourselves that we often forget to do because we're so busy being adults.
Yeah, no, for sure. I love it. So, how could people, what are you up to? How can people get in touch with you, find your books, that sort of thing?
Yeah, all of my books are on Amazon. You can just search my name, Amanda Cottrell, or I also have a website called artmindfulnessandcreativity.com, and there's links to all of my books on Amazon because it's the easiest way. It's just like they print on demand through Amazon, which is really amazing. And I drew all of the pictures for my books too because I'm artistic and I love to draw. And then I also, yeah, on all social media platforms, it's just art, mindfulness, and creativity. I think on TikTok it's like art, mind, create because I can't write the full thing, but it's my initials AMC, like art, mindfulness, creativity, the 3 words. So yeah.
Yeah, we'll put all those links in the show notes for people as well. And yeah, I just want to thank you for, well, taking the time to chat with me tonight, and to the Collective Rising conversation audience as well. And just, yeah, thank you for teaching and for doing what's passionate what you're passionate about, which is obviously helping kids. And it's just really cool to see someone with that passion and with that kind of zoomed out view of it, and weaving in these different practices to really just give kids the best chance. So thank you for being you.
Thank you.
And yeah, amazing. It's great to connect with you again. And we'll chat soon. All right, everyone. That's it for tonight. We'll see you on the next one.